What do you want to be? How can you live a meaningful life? These are the questions that I have been playing with for the last 20 years as a writer and educator of leaders. The questions are by no means simple, and yet mainstream media often tell us that success is possible by following a 5-step formula. I would like to challenge that illusion today and begin by taking a closer look at the forces that shape our world. To understand the state of the world, it's helpful to think in terms of shocks and slides. Shocks are acute moments of disruption that take us out of our comfort zone and instantly change how we see things. In this category, we find things like financial meltdowns, natural disasters, acts of war and terror, political instability, social movements. The collapse of the global economy in 2008 was such an event. The earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan in 2011 and caused the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster is another. The terror attacks in Mumbai in 2008 also fall into this category. Slides are incremental disruptions. These are things that we know of, but we find it really difficult relating to them. Here we find megatrends like climate change, increasing inequality, technological advancements, and changing demographics. We know, for example, that we are only 12 years away from a 1.5-degree temperature increase, which will have catastrophic consequences for the environment and life on planet Earth. We also know that the global population is set to hit 9.7 billion by 2050, and that more than a third of the world's children will be living in Africa by that time. Just imagine how that will reshape the geopolitical landscape. In combination, shocks and slides influence our perception of the world. They break down our resistance to change and often serve as a catalyst for initiating necessary reforms. A culture shift in society is triggered when we can no longer comprehend and understand the problems in front of us with our existing frame of thinking. When we age, rigidity often sets in, and creativity fades. We get comfortable with the status quo. But does it have to be like that? Is there a way that we can adapt to the ongoing culture shift in front of us? Division of labor has served us well in the past, but it has also fragmented our society. A single-minded focus governs how our choice of education, how our careers unfold, and the labels we attach to one another. But as the world changes and our workplaces become more hybrid and fluid and automated, we need to question what it means to be a generalist and a specialist. If we look at the lives of people who push the boundaries of our imagination and help us see things differently, they share some common traits. From business to art and from science to sport, these are often curious people who ask, what if? But they are also multidisciplinarians who move in and out of specialism and generalism. They are what Richard Martin and I call neo-generalists. They all play within a loop. Marie Curie, for example, was a scientist at the turn of the 20th century. She enjoyed a multidisciplinary, border-crossing career that embraced both physics and chemistry, winning Nobel Prizes in both fields. As well as developing a theory of radioactivity, she was responsible for the discovery of polonium and radium. Winston Churchill is another example. He was a career politician, a statesman celebrated for his leadership during World War II. But he was also a writer, a historian, and an artist, earning a Nobel Prize for Literature. A neo-generalist is both a specialist and a generalist. You can imagine their lives as being lived within an infinite loop. They are in constant movement across the loop. Where they choose to apply themselves at any given time depends on the context and their preferences. The term neo-generalist is an inclusive one. It encompasses all other terms, such as hyper-specialists, polymath, multi-potentialites, and T-shaped people. Neo-generalists possess both a deep and wide expertise, a form of serial mastery that spans several disciplines. They are self-directed learners, driven by a huge appetite to know more and to explore new ideas. As you can imagine, they are big picture thinkers, and as such, they make really valuable connections between people, ideas, and various specialist domains. And given their shape-shifting nature, neo-generalists rarely fit into the confining boxes we use professionally to impose a sense of order. But if we care about staying relevant in the future, we should be paying more attention to them. Our natural way of dealing with complexity is through separation. It's a way for us to understand the world. From an early age, we sort of learn, or we are being schooled to break problems apart into smaller, manageable pieces. We later experience that organizations operate the same way. And we come to accept that work gets done in silos, and we start believing that there's a straight ordered line between problem and solution. This compartmentalized approach preserves mental energy, and it narrows our focus. But it also causes artificial boundaries, and this causes also that we lose a sense of connection to a larger whole. UN Sustainable Development Goals illustrate this dilemma. The 17 goals are now being widely implemented as a global framework for investments, philanthropy, and development initiatives. But how do the goals work together? And do they conflict? Here's the thing: the world is not linear. Complex problems never exist in isolation. They always touch other problems. The interesting thing about, you could say, the interesting thing about these complex problems is also that in any living system is interdependent, and it makes up more than the sum of its parts. If we don't act accordingly, we cannot solve the shocks and slides of our time. And another thing is also that the price we pay for separating things is systemic failure. And I believe that it directly relates to how we have fragmented our world into specialist domains. Silos exist in structures, but silos exist also in our minds. So, alone, deep specialists cannot resolve the big issues of the world. In concert with neo-generalists, however, they give us all a better chance. Oppositions are part of everything we do. It's a choice, one thing over the other. Good from bad, right from wrong, new from old. The same dichotomy exists in our brain with a left and right hemisphere. What's interesting is when these opposites interact and their binary meanings blur. We can only truly understand something if we have a contrast to compare it to. One of the most hyped technologies right now is artificial intelligence. We must, however, keep in mind that AI rests on automated deduction, where the outcomes are determined by either-or choices, split into zeros and ones. The problem is not AI itself, but what we choose to do with it. If we are not careful, AI will merely produce solutions in the image of an industrial mindset, seeking to win and maximize profit at all costs. Facebook has shown us how easily algorithms can be manipulated to serve its master's selfish interest at the expense of civil society. The binary narrative and the left-brain logic that Silicon Valley dictates must be replaced by a more mature one that takes into account what it means to be fully human. The time of learning one single skill and relying on it for the rest of our lives is over. In order to thrive and stay relevant in an automated future, we need to be adaptable and constantly be learning new things. The father of modern management thinking, Peter Drucker, was also a man with an eclectic outlook on life. He once pointed out that in a world buffed by change, the only way to conserve is by innovating. The only stability possible is stability in motion. We mature and evolve through learning. This is not something we can rely solely on established educational institutions for. They are mainly designed for consistency and predictability. Their obsession with best practices and close problems with proven answers stand in the way of next practices. The conveyor belt model that they represent is a relic of the industrial era that is no longer pertinent to our needs. Instead, we must take responsibility for our own education and direction. This is the essence of human agency. The Danish restaurant Noma can teach us what it takes to evolve. When it was launched in 2003, it was the first high-end restaurant that based its gastronomy on regional produce and cultural heritage. At that time, Denmark was considered a culinary wasteland. If you wanted to have a decent dining experience, you only had two options, either French or Italian. Despite being ridiculed in the beginning, Noma went on to earn 2 Michelin stars and being honored as the world's best restaurant on 4 occasions. At the peak of its success, chef René Redzepi surprisingly decided to close Noma for 2 years while moving to a new location in Copenhagen. Noma could easily have continued, but Redzepi wanted to take its philosophy of seasonally and regionally sourced sustainable ingredients to the next level. Noma reopened last year, and its menu now fully echoes the rhythms of nature. Vegetarian dishes are served in the spring and summer, wild game dishes in the autumn, and seafood during the winter. Noma's journey is a search for meaning and identity. It also reflects the importance of connecting the past and the future. Particularly important to Noma's success and continuity are its values and purpose. They have remained somewhat stable over the years, but are shown to be relatively durable and has enabled Noma to absorb change without losing its distinctive character and style. Noma has kept an openness to play. It has remained curious, responsive, willingness, or have shown a willingness to experiment, and above all, challenge rigid thinking and conventional habits. These are also characteristics that we associate with the neo-generalist. The music industry also provides examples of neo-generalism. A key reason for U2's success and longevity as a rock band is their ability to renew themselves, just like Noma. But it also relates to the duality of meaning in many of their songs. U2 celebrates the possibility of becoming one but not the same, of going where the streets have no names, and of being both with and without someone. The songs remind us of the in-between gray matters in life, and that we must engage fully in the reconciliation of opposites to reach wholeness. Each one of us is a unique mashup of shoring fragments. Our identity is made up by, you could say, the experiences we had, the things we read, the conversations we've taken part in, the people we have met, the places we have visited. It is therefore only natural for us to refuse having our lives prescribed and narrowed by simplistic either-or labels. Where we go in life is who we are. Identity is about both being about who we are, but also who we become. It is through deep and wide exploration that we discover our full potential as human beings. We cannot connect the dots if we only have one. To connect people, ideas, and domains, we must travel. It is traveling across the specialist generalist loop, and it's by traveling across the specialist generalist loop that we are able to live what the Greek philosopher Socrates called an examined life. As we make our way into the future, and we're trying to shape it, we find ourselves in uncharted territory. We need people who live in more than one world to guide us on that journey. Let's allow ourselves a both-and approach to life. We can be a parent and a child at the same time. We can even be a parent to our own parents when needed. We can be a teacher and a student. We can challenge and be challenged. We can lead and we can follow, depending on what the situation calls us to do. To rephrase the author Walt Whitman, we are large, we contain multitudes. We cannot separate the roles we play in life. They are interconnected. They feed and nurture each other. They make us who we are in all our ugliness and glory. Thank you.